Tax and accounting firms want to automate their processes. They might even need to automate their processes. But what does that automation look like practically? Welcome to Clarity on Tech, a podcast powered by the Thomson Reuters Institute. I'm Zach Warren, the Institute's Technology and Innovation Insights lead. In each episode, we dive deep into the future of the legal, corporate, tax accounting and audit, and government communities. On today's episode, we discuss the state of tax automation, where it's being done, what success looks like, and why it's important to begin now. Today, I sit down with Dwight Crow, current VP Tax AI at Thomson Reuters and recently CEO of the tax automation startup Additive. We discuss where tax firms should get started on their automation journey. Hey there, everybody. Zach Warren with the Thomson Reuters Institute here for yet another Clarity on Tech to start 2026. And we have a great conversation for you today. One I'm really excited about, getting into the nuts and bolts of the tax workflow of the future. And to do that, I have somebody very knowledgeable about the tax workflow of the future here to talk with me, Dwight Crow, VP Tax AI at Thomson Reuters. How are you doing today?
I'm phenomenal, Zach. Thrilled to be here.
Thank you. Now, just to kick us off, tell us a little bit about your background and all of your work. Just joined Thomson Reuters a little bit ago and
Yeah,
had your own startup before that.
yeah. A little bit about me. So been doing AI for a minute now. Startups as well. I guess if you're too dumb to leave the startup game, you keep founding them. I've sold 3 companies now, including the one Additive that just became part of the Thomson Reuters playbook. So previously, we sold I co-founded a small company that did automotive search that we captured about 3% of the market, did Y Combinator. I founded it with my college roommate who then became the head of OpenAI's supercompute division, so smart guy. We sold that. I ran the Facebook e-commerce team for little under a couple of years. And we took that, I think, from something like 100 million in revenue a quarter to over 1 billion. Many hands lifting that boat. But I launched a few of the flagship products, including working on some of the new online behavioral advertising systems that did advanced recommendation and kicking that off. Then started a audio hearing aid company using AI to remove the background noise so it's easier to hear in loud places. Ironically, hearing aids often make everything louder. Anyway, sold that. Now runs all the audio for the Meta Ray-Ban glasses. And finally, was lucky enough that through all these, many of my friends had very complex tax situations, and all their accountants just, were some of my favorite people, but truly seemed overworked, sometimes, dare I say, stressed out around busy season, and thought, my goodness, what an opportunity to bring these LLMs, this AI that we've been able to apply to so many things, and bring it to the accounting world, where there's so often, it's such an important task, really, the pillar of trust in a society in which people can trade and exchange goods and services, but that the tools sometimes haven't caught up to the technological potential. And we just got so excited about the opportunity to say, hey, starting with K1s, but then soon other tax documents, could we make it so that instead of every busy season, each staff is not, dare I say it, locked in a room with, 10,000 pages of PDFs and forced to copy them all, but we'd say, could it just be done like that? So that's what we did. Just joined Thomson Reuters, am lucky enough to be the VP of AI tax, I suppose, and thrilled to be part of this team.
Absolutely. So I am curious, especially coming from all of those past industries, what have you found the reception like to AI and tax, especially as you've gone out there in the market? Have tax professionals really taken to this, or has it taken a little bit of cajoling?
Yeah, I think, dare I say it, there's 2 sides to this. I've been so blown away and impressed with the openness to change and the eagerness that most tax professionals bring. You talk about many other industries, and I'd say they're much more afraid and cautious, or sometimes even hubristic. They say, "Oh, how can an AI help me? I'm so great at my job. I have this bajillion year degree." And I've been so impressed with the open mindedness and the sort of eagerness to see if they could help their clients that tax professionals had. Now that said, on the other side of it, I think that it's a profession that requires such meticulousness and accuracy. And I think, forgive me, but I think there's so many, startups, of which I was recently just one, but so many other startups, at least, that we would say, kind of are selling a bit of smoke and mirrors, where they've got some LLM on the back and they say, oh, it's going to solve everything. And then, when you try it, it just outputs all these hallucinations and it's no good. And I think accountants have seen a lot of those things and been overpromised to so many times that now there actually is a bit more skepticism. And so it's these two things of great openness and curiosity, but also I think some really healthy caveat emptor, where they are saying, hey, let me try it a few times before I really believe that it works.
Which I think is fair, and that's something we're seeing across all professional services. And really, it's taken kind of a life of its own, I think, in the past year, where people have started to your point, play around with this a little bit more, understand what it can and can't do. So, getting into the nuts and bolts, then, what are some of the major pain points that you're finding that tax firms are looking to tackle with automation and AI today?
Yeah, I mean, I think tax firms are willing to tackle anything if it works. Obviously document ingestion, the beginnings of the more routine work paper analysis. Audit's going to go through a freaking transformation. There's so much that it can do. If I were to flip it around and say, what do I think AI can do today? Maybe it's going to be a similar list, but AI is increasingly, so it can write anything. It's better at English than I am, and I've been learning this language for more than 35 years. That said, I think very few people are bandwidth limited in accounting by how quickly they can write. That's much more of a lawyer thing. What it can do very well, and that's where we worked on, is it understands words and pictures now at call it like a sort of high school level, where if you give it the right prompt with all the right context and you feed it and you say, what is in this table of, I'll say, a 1065 K1 QBI table, and it can read it and it can understand it in a way that if you tried to do this with pre-LLM technologies, it would just fundamentally have not worked. And so this has been this tremendous unlock for document processing that I think we're starting to see throughout accounting, whether it's in audit, being able to verify that, that the records provided by a client are coherent with the records in their ERM. This is in tax, where the PBC can be processed automatically into structured data and then used in a much more sophisticated and automated labor-saving way by clients. And I think at the next stage that we're just sort of the frontier, though, is beyond that, where we're saying, how can we work in the work paper? How can we start doing some of the more judgmental thoughts? And, glibly, I think people often use the word agent. When I think of the word agent, just to maybe lay some definitions, people will say, AI. And to me, that means anything that uses an LLM. And an LLM is, again, shorthand for a large architecture, usually based on a transformer model that's been pre-trained with a tremendous amount of data, whether pictures or words, so that it has a sort of, call it high school level understanding of pictures and words. And an agent is anything AI is built on one of those LLMs. And an agent is something that has an LLM that has sort of an open control loop where it can decide when a task is done. And so it can go out, it can look at something, it can evaluate whether it thinks the task is done against an initial request, and then keep acting in a series of steps until it says, hey, I'm done. And I think we're about to see agentic workflows take on some of the more basic parts of work paper stuff, where previously you might have said, hey, staff member, I need you to go out and I need you to get all the PFICs. I need you to do a PFIC test on every single one of these passive foreign investment companies. And then for any of them that don't match the PFIC test or there's information missing, I need you to reach out to the client and clarify on these things. And I think that's the frontier. Nobody shipped that yet. We haven't. No startup has, to my knowledge. Thomson Reuters is working on some ambitious things there with ready to review and ready to advise, starting to approach that level of stuff. But that's kind of the next frontier that I think is really going to be exciting and transformational. So again, maybe recapping it, tremendous amounts of success in sort of unstructured document ingestion. That's the big unlock that I'd call it, 2023, 2024, 2025. 2026, 2027, I think we're going to see agentic workflows, um, and further sophisticated judgment, and that high school level understanding is going to get to the point where it can pop up and even fix its own errors. But that's kind of the high level of what I'd see.
That's really interesting because actually, as we record this, I'm completely neck deep in our AI and professional services report, which teaser, it's going to be coming out in February. But one of the questions we asked is around agentic AI specifically, how long do you think it's going to be until it's a central part of your workflow? And around three-quarters of respondents think, oh, I actually expect this to be a central part of my workflow within 5 years. So call it 2030. A lot of people are seeing the same timeline that you are. But then my question is, how do you bridge that gap? How do you get from expectation, we think that this is the future, to actually getting people to try this, to try new technologies, to see what the future looks like
Yeah,
themselves?
yeah. I mean, the first thing I'd say is, and at risk of ceding all expertise and authority here, I'd say don't overthink it. The accountants are the experts. If you're an accountant and you're listening to this, you know what you need to get done. Don't listen to me. Try the tool yourself, and if it removes more friction than it adds, boy, you've got a winner. It doesn't matter what some AI goobity gug person tells you. It's just a tool, and if you like it, great. It's just like evaluating a staff member. If you're hiring a new staff and they're taking away more work than they're accidentally creating in management, great. And that's a reasonable way to think about AI as sort of a tool with somewhat human-like intelligence that you can deploy. And so I'd say that's a good rule of thumb, is just trust your judgment. Now, the next thing I might also again say is there's a few rules of thumb. And the biggest one I'd think of is, I alluded to some earlier of what is good at what's not, but the biggest one I'd say is AI, machine learning in general, statistical systems, um, the there's called nines of accuracy, 90%, 99%, 99.9. The first 90% of accuracy is the easiest, and it's almost easier than getting from 90 to 99. And it's probably far easier to get from that than 99.9 to, or excuse me, 99 to 99.9. And so the one error I've seen is so often a startup or an internal team in an accounting firm will go, hey, look, we've got this prototype, and it takes them a week to get something that's 90% of the way done. And what they don't realize is it's actually maybe another year of work to get it to that 99% or 99.9% of accuracy that you really need to deploy it and trust it. And further, to build it in a way that scales, where, during busy season, you're putting millions of pages in, it doesn't just fall over because it's in some Jupyter notebook or other prototype grade deployment method, and that's integrated in all the systems you need so that, you've got the security, you've got the integrations into your tax software, you've got the integrations into your own internal provisionment systems at your firm. So I would just caution that AI has never it's never been easier to build a good prototype than in the world of AI. But a prototype is so different than a real product. So just be cautious there would be the one thing I'd advise.
If I can play a little devil's advocate from the consumer side of this as well, because it is something I hear occasionally. Oh, so you're building a tool, say it's 95% accurate right now. You're saying you're trying to put in work to make it 99% accurate. Why should I dive in now then? What is the worth of me testing out this AI tool if it's just going to be so much better a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road?
I think that's a tremendous question. You need to pick tools that would help you at 95%. I'll give you an example. And clearly I built this product called Additive, and it processes K1s. So, imagine you're going through and you've got all this data. And we are, for many of our unstructured footnotes that previously only a person could do it, we're in the range of 95 to 97% accurate. And the reason people find it valuable is previously the paradigm was you would send it frequently to an offshore team where a person would do it. A person would cost you, let's just say $1,000 for 10,000 pages. I don't know, something like that, probably more than that. And they would do it also at about 97% accuracy, and it would take 2 weeks. And if you can say, hey, I've got a tool now where it takes an hour, it's at 97% accuracy today, and it costs me, you know, $3 instead of $1,000, you've got a winner where not only are you saving money today, but you're positioned so that you're going to just have this rising tide of AI keep making you better and better without having to change. And so I'd say, if you need something that's 99.9%, AI might not be where you need it today. But if you've got something where you said, hey, we've already got 3 levels of review, and if I just have to enter 1/20th the numbers, then boy, this might really help you and explore tools where that's the need.
Yeah. And that kind of lends itself to my next question as well, which is the age old question of, so what is this going to do to the tax professional? Now, I know that's always the question in business. What is this going to mean for the labor market? In tax, maybe a little bit less of a question because there has been such a talent crunch within the tax profession within the past, call it 10 years or so, where they're trying to get more and more tax professionals in. So there is room for more work to be done. But I still wanted to pose the question because I'm sure it's something that you've gotten on your side as well.
Yeah, and no one knows. I mean, if anyone says they know for sure, they don't. And it's an ultimate question. What's due to the VP of AI profession as I get replaced? But I think the way
Both of us here.
yeah, soon there's going to be some, beautiful animated person that looks far better and is far more articulate than me to go on podcasts. It's going to be coming. But the way I'd see it is a couple fold. I think one, you just truly are going to see a lot of the drudgery, the thoughtless work go away, simply because an AI will do it faster, cheaper, more accurately. As meticulous as a young staff is, but 80 hours into their work week on their fifth Red Bull on October 13th, trying to get it done, they're going to start making some errors, and the AI just won't. And so I think that you're going to see the accounting profession, loosely, often it's been described as a pyramid where sort of you have, young people starting their careers at the beginning to do the basic work. And then there's sort of an up or out motion. And at the top, you've got these partners that have seen everything and are the cream of their firm. I think that's going to turn much more into a sort of tube, if you will, a rectangle, where there's a small number of people that, they're not as sophisticated as the partner at the top. They haven't seen it all, but they're in training for that. And it's not that they're being used for their fingers to type, it's that they're being used for their minds. And so in many ways, I would hope that this profession becomes much more a profession of intelligence, reputation, judgment, relationships, and frankly, putting your name on the line, as accountants already do, that this is right. That at the end of the day, they triple checked everything, and gosh darn it, this P&L is what it says it is. And so I hope and believe that this will be a sort of elevation of the profession, although there will probably be ultimately less accountants. One final thought is that I think there will be more accounting, as an example. So we help with taxes frequently for fund of funds or other complex structures of, partnerships that have multi-tiers. If you can say, previously, if you said, well, we could save you 5% on your taxes, but it would triple your tax bill, that's not always a win for some people.
I think that's very astute. So, as we're getting closer to the end of our time, I do want to do some forecasting. And you talked about AI agents and what you're expecting over in the next couple of years. But let's even call it the next 12 months without giving away any of the secret sauce or anything. Is there anything that you're particularly excited for in the immediate future that tax professionals, accounting professionals should be excited for as well?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to some of the stuff that we're doing. That is, I think Thomson Reuters has projected that we're really committed to automating taxes, starting with the 1040 and then going on to other form types. And, there's so many great teams. There's the Materia team that came in and is now leading R2R. And there's folks branching out from that are working on audit. Some of the stuff we'll be doing will probably help with that R2R ready to review, in which we want to say, hey, how can we streamline starting from the most basic ones, but ultimately to the most complex parts of the 1040 in a way that both automatically understands every document and information source that's PBC, creates auditable, introspectable work papers so that the accountant can look at it, verify themselves, and then ultimately show to the client or the IRS that things have been done correctly and per the rule books. and then ultimately have something in GoSystem, UltraTax, or whatever your favorite tax filing software is that you can review and click file on in a way that's much more about the thought and judgment than necessarily putting all the basic information in. And I kind of said that before, but that's the first step. And once you've got that, then you can start saying, hey, how can we optimize? How can we start saying, now that we really have all the information, let's lower that tax burden. And so I think that, again, the profession is going to kind of change, where it's going to be much less of a, we did the work, to how can we get clever? How can we save the client money?
Yeah, and I think that's particularly astute what you were talking about as well, with it's much more about strategy, it's much more about critical thinking. In speaking of the AI report that I was talking about earlier, that was one thing. We had a quote from a CFO based in the UK who basically said, I kind of feel like CFOs in the early 80s must have thought when spreadsheets first came out and they could finally automate a lot of what they were doing and not having to write things by hand, not having to go to the calculator. Now, to your point, a lot of those same tasks that people don't want to do are increasingly being automated, which frees people up to actually do the accounting work that they want to do. Just like you just showed, mind blown a little bit. It's really, really, I think some of the AI skeptics are coming around for that reason, because they're seeing that it's not looking to take jobs. It's
Yeah,
not looking to do that critical thinking.
elevate.
It's looking to do drudgery. It's looking to elevate. Exactly.
Yeah, couldn't
And
have
I
said it
think
better.
that's so, yeah. So, any final thoughts before I let you go here today?
No, what a pleasure to be on. I think it's I truly think, this is an even more exciting time for accounting than the advent of the spreadsheet, and all those macros and crazinesses. This is, everyone is going to be saying, hey, how can I, starting with just very tools that are kind of obvious of just put it into Excel, but soon saying, hey, how can I almost manage a team of agentic accountants beneath me to accomplish very big, very sophisticated things in which I'm helping do the judgment. And I think it's just such an exciting time to be in accounting. And it's, pretty thrilling to be building tools to help move that revolution along.
I 100% agree. This is Dwight Crow, VP Tax AI with Thomson Reuters. Thank you very much for being with us here today, Dwight.
My pleasure. Talk soon, Zach.
I'd like to thank Dwight for joining me today. As he noted, there's real opportunity here to change how people work. It's not necessarily going to be easy, real change rarely is, but there are so many tax processes, K1s and beyond, that can be made easier through automation. And particularly in a tax sphere where resourcing crunches have been the top issue for years, a little automation can go a long way. Thank you as always for joining us for Clarity on Tech, powered by the Thomson Reuters Institute. You could follow or subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform, and don't forget to share with your colleagues and leave a 5-star review or positive review on YouTube. For more data-driven analysis of today's professional services market and in-depth conversations with industry thought leaders, please visit us online at thomsonreuters.com/institute and follow us on LinkedIn under the Thomson Reuters Institute. Clarity on Tech is a production of Thomson Reuters, copyright Thomson Reuters 2026.